Hi folks, and welcome back to another edition of Griz Tracks. I'm AJ Mazzolini here at the Mazzolini.
And I'm Kyle Sample, sports reporter at the Mazzolini.
The Griz are coming off another win, a road victory over UC Davis in Big Sky Conference play. That gives them 2 in a row, which is a nice start to the way conference season is going, especially considering how rough that out-of-conference schedule was. So they're looking for a third straight victory this week against Weber State in Washington Grizzly Stadium, which we'll get to here in a second. But first off, game against UC Davis, some nice things, maybe some more misexecution kind of things that the Griz have had this year, but looked pretty good, especially on defense. That defense is killer this year.
Yeah, I mean, 2 straight weeks with at least a player of the week, one with the national player of the week, and they've just kind of really stopped their last 2 opponents from really doing anything.
Yeah, and it all starts up front. That defensive line is one of the best maybe in program history, and that's saying a lot considering some of the defensive ends and tackles that have gone through this program. The last week, 2 interceptions for the defensive line, now more than the entirety of the secondary altogether. Some forced fumbles for fumble recoveries, a whole bunch more sacks. It's just been crazy for those poor quarterbacks running around with their heads cut off.
Yeah, and it started from the beginning. I mean, they went, I think UC Davis went like 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and it was just like, it just seemed to snowball on them, and they got a trick play and a screen play, but never really able to get anything against that defense.
Right, and then on the other side, the Griz finally got a little bit something going with Chad Chalich at quarterback. He ended up with 3 touchdown passes and about 260 yards passing in that game, which is pretty good for a guy who hasn't only been taking the first string reps for just a couple of weeks here. So it's nice to see a little bit of progression from him. He's not looking so panicky back there anymore.
Yeah, and it kind of seemed shaky at the beginning, and then it seemed like he settled down, and like you said, he got those 3 touchdowns and sort of got the offense moving along with that run game that they used a bunch of different running backs.
Yeah, and some of that slow start was because the defense for Davis, which had showed man coverage throughout most of the season, barely threw any man at the Griz and sort of made things a little difficult, and they had to adjust on the fly. You mentioned the running backs there. Some guys were banged up. Logwood counts, probably not going to play this week, but a new guy, Jeremy Calhoun, got into the mix. True freshman, scored a touchdown. A lot to like about what he's going to bring to this offense.
Yeah, and they were really high on him when he came out of Long Beach Poly. He was recruited by some Pac-12 schools, and this might be a breakout week because Weber's run defense not that good, giving up almost 200 yards a game.
That's right, and opponent for this week, Weber State Wildcats. It's a 2 p.m. kickoff at Washington Grizzly Stadium here in Missoula, and Weber's coming off maybe one of their worst games in program history, it might almost be able to say. A 44-0 loss to Southern Utah, where they just turned the ball over about every single time they touched it. And that's a team that, as you said earlier, kind of looking for an identity and just looking to forget last week, most importantly.
Yeah, they have Jay Hills, their 4th coach in 5 years. They've overhauled their roster during that time, during the 2 years that he's been there. And they got 2 wins in the Big Sky last year, and they got 2 wins earlier this year. But last week, like you said, was just a really awful performance.
Really bad. And those 2 wins are against some of the other bottom feeder programs in the Big Sky, so it's a little hard to tell exactly what they can bring to the table. What we do know is they have a quarterback, Jadrian Clark, who has been starting the games, but then there's another guy they bring in, Justin Shaw, who's been just sort of interspersed in there sometimes, taking a few possessions, and he had all of the bad possessions last week, unfortunately. 4 pass attempts, 3 interceptions, some sacks. Just looking to get anything started in the passing game especially.
Yeah, and I think it's just so hard to do that with the 2 quarterback system. There's been a lot of schools that have tried it. It doesn't usually work. I think it's hard for a quarterback to get a rhythm, and then you throw them against this defense that has just really gotten after quarterbacks, and it could be another long day for those guys.
That's right, and I asked Coach Hill about that, and he said that when he was at Utah, when he was an assistant there middle of last decade, they used some 2 quarterback sets, they had Brian Johnson, a guy in there who led Utah to an undefeated and Sugar Bowl season in 2008, I believe, when they were 13-0, one of the top ranks in the country. But he was the only starter that season. That was not the season when they had two guys back there. So it's kind of interesting. Like I know he wants to get this young guy, true freshman, a little bit of experience, but he's just getting thrown to the wolves right now.
Yeah, and it really hasn't worked out. I mean, especially last week, I think, like you said, 3 interceptions. They had 6 turnovers total. They didn't score any points. You got to wonder if you can continue going with the 2 quarterback system.
Yeah. I feel like you should have learned from the Griz in the Roper and Sell era from back a few years ago. But anyway, on the defensive side, Weber's actually looking pretty decent. That's 44 points notwithstanding. Some of those were, bad field position, defensive touchdowns even. And so their pass defense has kind of been where the bread and butter is. They're going to be without one of their guys. a guy with 3 interceptions this year, Jawan Harrison. But they do have a lot of other really nice coverage guys, some big safeties, Josh Burton, one of them. And they've been able to lock down the pass game pretty well, considering.
It'll be interesting to see if they take a page out of these other teams' playbooks that have kind of guarded the University of Montana receivers in a similar way, just going with a lot of cover 3 cloud kind of stuff and really disrupting their ability to get upfield.
Right, which is half the reason you're seeing Chase Nakarado with so many screen passes, because all the open space is right there off the line of scrimmage. And we'll see maybe a little more run game as well. Montana has upwards of 200 yards rushing each of the last 2 weeks, and the Weber defense against the run had a few struggles. So we'll see how that balance kind of plays out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what Calhoun does if he can open up the pass game just from a running back's perspective. We thought that going into the season, running backs were going to be a big part of the pass game. They haven't really been so far. Calhoun caught a lot of passes when he was in high school, so it'll be fun to see if he can add that dynamic.
Yeah, and that game again will be on Saturday, so we'll see how things will work out for the Grizzlies if they can keep the winning streak rolling. Make sure to tune in to Mazzolini.com throughout the week to stay up on all your Griz action, and check back with us next week and Saturday to see how things went against Weber State. Thanks for watching.